3, 2, 1, go. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Happy, Wednesday? Time in quarantine always feels so weird to me. So happy Wednesday. Thanks so much for joining us. In case you are new here, or in case maybe you just haven't been with us for a while, my name is Meg. I am a virtual host and moderator with Power to Fly, and I am super excited to be joining you for yet another amazing chat and learn session. As we go to get started here, I do just want to go over a couple quick housekeeping items. So that way, in case you are new here, you have what to expect and how best to participate. So like all of our virtual events, today is all about you. It's about our participants, it's about our community members, and we want to make sure that the time that you spend with Power to Fly is time well worth it. So to that end, we want to make sure that y'all participate and you get as much out of today's session as possible. So if you would like to ask questions or comment or add context if we're going over one of your questions, please feel free to do so. You can do it in a couple of different ways. You can come off mute to ask your question. You can, if you do come off mute, you will show up in the live recording, whether your camera is on or off. So if you have any privacy concerns, no worries. You can still participate by putting any questions, comments, or context into the Zoom group chat. And if you are in deep cover, don't want anyone to know you're here, not a problem. You can still participate. Just instead of sending your comments or questions in the Zoom chat to everyone, you're going to tick that little drop-down menu and pick my name, Meg Power to Fly, from that list, and you'll send them to me directly. I'll make sure that your questions or comments are raised and keep you anonymous. Like I said, today's session is being recorded. So we are recording and we will post that video on our website in a couple days. We'll also be live streaming to YouTube right now. So the video will be available on our YouTube channel within a couple minutes of the end of today's session. And in everybody that registered for today's session, whether you join, if you couldn't join us, no worries, you'll watch this from the future. Hi. And if you stay for 5 minutes or you stay for the full 60, everybody that registers is going to get an email in 1 to 2 business days that will have the link to where you can rewatch this video on our website. But like I said, if Diane says something even more amazing that you have to share with somebody right away, feel free to do so. You can always head over to our YouTube channel. We are at Power to Fly, and you can find the video there. You can also check out a bunch of our old, back catalog of videos, past chat and learns, and the panels that we've done on virtual events, our diversity summits that we host, all that kind of stuff you can find there. You can also find it on our website as well, and it's always free to watch and utilize our resources. If you do head over, if you're more like a social-driven person, not a problem. We highly encourage people to take video or photos as we go, share on social media that you are learning with Power to Fly today. You can tag us we are at Power to Fly on all social media channels, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And our preferred hashtag is #PowerToFly, all one word. So as we get going here, I want to highlight just a couple things first. So first off, I would love to introduce our amazing speaker. So Diane Foley is an accomplished business leader, outspoken STEMinist, and a proud mother. She's passionate about people and helping them to reach their potential. And she's a 2020 Society of Women Engineers Advocating Women in Engineering Award winner. So welcome, Diane, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thanks, Meg. I'm really excited to be here. I want to share a little bit more about myself, just to kind of level set for folks on the call. I am a native New Yorker. I've been in the tech industry my whole life. So my degree is in mechanical engineering, and I've worked in technology. So kind of really been in a male-dominated work kind of force my whole life. Also have my MBA because always did have ambition. One of the things that I think is important also for folks to know is I'm the daughter of immigrants. And so I was really steeped in the American dream. Hey, if you work hard, you're going to get ahead. And, that became such a strong message in my mind that it may have actually hurt me, because I was kind of blind to the organizational dynamics that can inhibit people from moving forward. I thought, hey, American dream, you work hard, you're going to get ahead. and it's more complex than that. Organizations are made up of people, and there's some complexity there. So what I'll say is a lot of what I'm going to share today, I learned from experience and the hard way. And I had to overcome some really ingrained beliefs that I had about how success worked in America, let's say.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm a couple generations removed from the immigrants in my family that came here originally, but not by much. And that's also like the American dream: pull yourself up by your bootstraps, do what you have to do, and then you'll succeed. Follow the rules, do all that kind of stuff. And you're right; it's kind of crazy how long I kept really coming back to that, or didn't realize how ingrained that belief structure was, even when it wasn't working for me. Even when I was working 2-3 jobs and still, I didn't have health insurance through an employer because I was working all these different, part-time jobs, and still couldn't afford health insurance, couldn't afford to move out, even though I was working 3+ jobs. So yeah, I think it's really important to recognize that might be this, where some people are still coming from. They might still have those beliefs, but a lot of people are coming to realize that it's not, especially people that are not, that haven't been personally affected by the negative aspects of that belief system, right? So yeah, thank you so much for going over that. So before we jump into questions, I want to highlight something real quick. So Diane is joining us from as part of her work at the Raytheon organization. And I'm going to share a link here in the chat in just a moment. But what I want you to do is when I share that link, you can go ahead and click on that link, and it'll take you to Raytheon's Power to Fly page. There's a couple things that are really important here. You can check out more information and get more information about Raytheon as a company. You can also click on the events and see past events they've taken part in, as well as upcoming future events. So you can get signed up if you are really interested in hearing maybe from Diane again. You can also tick that little tab that says open jobs. So as you see, there's more than 2,400 Raytheon positions that are listed on Power to Fly. So that's super great. We love to see it. If you click on those open roles, you can take a look, you can apply. I'm not sure if they lead you to apply on Raytheon's page or not, but you'll see whether they, it'll either redirect you or there'll be an application to fill out. And if you do apply via Power to Fly, it doesn't do anything to hurt you, but there is there's a Power to Fly employee that's assigned to every company, and they follow up on your applications. And so that helps to make sure that, even though we know everybody is like doing their best, and we have these like great systems in place, they're also created by people and run by people, and so they're imperfect. So it's always helpful to have that extra backup to you. The other thing I want to highlight is when you navigate to this page, at the top right hand corner, there's going to be a big pink follow button. If you are at all interested in Raytheon and working for Raytheon, whether you fill out an application or not, absolutely click that follow button. It's going to do 2 things. It's going to put you on their follow network, which is great. It's a place where Power to Fly employees, as well as Raytheon's HR team, can check out that follow network, and it gives them an idea of, these are people that are actively interested in Raytheon as a company, as an employer. So it kind of helps you stand out. It's also a good place that we check before new jobs get listed, because that way we can see if anybody that's on that list really, we know they're interested in Raytheon, and it also helps us know that, they might have the skills that would suit this particular role. The other thing it does is it sort of works as your friend at the company. So like I said, it tells Raytheon like, hey, there's this person and she's really interested, or they're really interested. But it also works like, kind of telling you like, hey, they just posted this new role, you should go take a look at it. So it's a really nice way to stay updated on, when they post new roles, without having to feel like you're kind of constantly circling back to the same message boards, and they sometimes feel like they never change. You can follow as many companies as you like on Power to Fly. You can follow and unfollow at will. There's no limit. So it's a really great way to make sure that you are staying up to date on the companies that interest you. It's also, clicking that follow button is really great, especially if you don't see anything right now that, really suits you or that you'd like to apply for. All right, so I'll drop that link right here in the chat, and then we will go into our questions. So y'all submitted some amazing questions ahead of today's event, and what we did is we collected a bunch of them. We tried to arrange them into a conversational format. And so this screen and the next will be the questions that we're going to try and get to today. If you want to take a screenshot, great. But like we talked about, there's this whole session is being recorded. So no worries, you don't have to take notes, and you can always review it later. I'm going to go to the next slide. Like I said, we're going to try and get to all these. We probably, but that's not to say that we don't want your participation. So we want you all to drive today's discussion. If there's something that you particularly want to know about, please feel free to ask it. Come off mute, put it in the Zoom chat, send me a DM, however you like. And then we will prioritize your conversations because y'all took the time to join us today. All right, so Diane, to get us started here, this first person had written in asking, what is the best way to build allies in a new job without looking dependent? Do you have any strategies that I can try to find allies, especially in a male-dominated industry?
So having worked in a male-dominated industry my entire life, absolutely. We need to stop, as women, we really need to stop looking at asking folks to be allies, whether it's mentors, sponsors, et cetera, that's somehow dependent, because it isn't. That's the way, especially kind of corporations and businesses work. And in every field, it's like that. So really, we need to get over that thought that, hey, that's asking for help. That's just the way things are done. So we just need to get comfortable with that. Having worked, I'm going to give some kind of background, but having worked in a male-dominated industry, there are some organizational dynamics at work that, as women, we really need to be aware of. And I'm going to talk based on research that I've done. It doesn't necessarily get to issues of intersectionality of gender with other identities, but I'm going to do my best to speak generally. But one of the issues that women face is the double bind. So often young career professionals are told to find a leader that they admire and emulate them. But if the leader we admire is a man and we emulate those male leadership qualities, women can be perceived as trying too hard or trying to be too masculine. Yet if we emulate qualities that are kind of more on the feminine scale, of stereotypes, we can be viewed as weak. So women in organizations, and more so in organizations that are male dominated, really have to walk a line. And it's a well-known phenomenon called the double bind. So if anyone hasn't heard of it before, I really recommend looking that up, because we aren't being judged the same way. And as much as I wish that we were, it's just not true. And another thing that impacts women in organizations is the imposter syndrome. So there's a lot of women who feel that, someday someone's going to figure out that I really don't belong in the role that I'm in, right? I don't have the qualifications. And it happens to men and women, but it tends to impact women more. And, a lot of folks say, well, women just need to get over it. I try to take the different approach about what is it in society and organizations that cause women to feel that way, and why don't we try to address that? So, I would also say women need to realize, hey, I do belong here, right? I'm not an imposter, I do belong here. So the other thing that impacts women too is bias, and that, we talk about unconscious bias, but there's also conscious bias, and it can come from anywhere. So I once was actually doing a presentation on gender dynamics, and one of the women in the classroom said, we were sharing stories and kind of got to the informal part, and she said, I never want to work for a woman. And so I said to her, so you don't believe women should be leaders? And then she just looked at me, right? And flipping it that way, that wasn't her belief necessarily, but it was something that she said, and she said often that she never wanted to work for a woman. So bias can come from everywhere, and we're all biased. And the important thing is to be open, recognize we're biased, and kind of move forward. So the best way to build allies in a new job or any job really is, first of all, to be intentional about it. Think about what you want to achieve in your career and what are the experiences you need to achieve, and kind of prepare and go in with that. And then find the people who've had those experiences and say, hey, listen, I'm really interested in being a CIO someday. And I notice, you're on your way to that. What are some of the things that I need to do? And can you help me along the way? And what I found over time is people really do actually want to help you. So I don't think you'd look dependent in any way.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, is that if you're worried about looking dependent, maybe look at what you're hoping to get out of that allyship relationship. If you're looking for somebody that's going to, like, not rescue you isn't the right term, but kind of like do all of the hard work for you, like, make sure that you get, you get a chance to speak and all that kind of stuff. You're right. You do have to a certain extent kind of help yourself in that way, where, try to speak and see if you're getting spoken over. That's a point where you can then, like, build up, either a friendship or something, or you can even approach somebody who's maybe in a higher position than you are and just say, hey, here's how I'm kind of feeling. I feel like I don't really get heard at these meetings. Would you mind, kind of helping me out if I'm getting talked over by this other person? And I absolutely love how you pointed out about, like, that woman who didn't want to work for a woman. I feel like that's kind of like the professional version of the cool girl, attitude that oh my God, it was so ingrained. I mean, like, from probably through my college career, honestly, even into, like, maybe the last, like, 5 or 6 years, when you kind of see it starting to wane. But it's that idea of, like, well, I don't have girlfriends because, there's just so much drama. I get along better with guys, that whole kind of thing. And it's like, it sounds like that's a kind of the attitude that then proceeds into the workforce and is like, I don't want to work for a woman. I mean, did you ever ask her, like, what her, like, reasoning was behind it?
So honestly, it wasn't the place, is what I'll say. Then, it was a kind of, there were about 40 people in the room, so it just wasn't the place. But I have heard that comment, and it is interesting what you mentioned about that kind of cool girl, because there's another bias that exists called tug of war, and what it is women who've kind of been successful and made it are reluctant to help other women, saying, hey, listen, I made it, all of you need to figure out how to make it. It's a bias that exists as well.
That kind of sounds like it goes into, like, the paying your dues mentality. Like, I had to struggle, so you have to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something, I don't know that it's necessarily colloquially referred to as this, but I call it kind of the Highlander theory of, like, there can only be one successful woman in a department at once, or there can only be one, woman in in an industry or in a leadership role at a single time. And it's like, well, that's just not the case. And so if you look at it less, I think people are, especially women, are starting to look at it less like a competition and more like, we're on the same team. Like, if I'm helping you to succeed, it doesn't make me look worse, and it doesn't prevent you from helping me to succeed as well. So it's it's a very interesting dynamic that I feel like culturally we're trying to move against, but definitely, kind of need to keep pushing that and moving it in the right direction.
Absolutely.
All right. Pardon everybody. I've got dogs snoring in the background, so I'm going to keep going on and off mute as I talk. Please make sure that unless you're actively asking a question, you remain on mute, whether or not you're going to, come off and ask a question or comment. Just, best practices. Okay, so let's go to our next question. This person wanted to talk a little bit more about finding allies, and how do you go about doing this when COVID-19 has resulted in you working remotely? So I think it's interesting to kind of think about this, because when I thought about this question, I came at it from, like, a new person in a new role or new department or new employer. But it could also be, the case if you maybe haven't had allies at your current job before. So how would you, adjust your approach for the COVID-19 era?
So there's a couple things. I'd start with defining allies. So certainly there are allies in your organization, and you know, a lot of folks are thinking that way. You can also have allies outside your organization, right? In industry groups, in professional societies. You know, I'm a member of the Society of Women Engineers, and I found great allies in that organization. And so it is harder when you're not, you know, let's say at work on campus and can meet folks by the water cooler, but you can schedule time with people. So if you're looking for someone who's a mentor, you know, the people you do know, you can reach out and say, who do you think would be a good person for me to reach out, engage with, and then try to find time on their calendar. And actually, you know, it's interesting because there are some negatives from COVID, but there's also some positives. Most of us are working from home, or many of us are working from home, and so are the people we want to be allies with. So it's not like you'll show up someplace and someone won't be there, right? Now there's more time and more opportunity to engage with folks without having to, you know, and I work at a geographically dispersed company, without having to fly all over the country, right? I can just go end one meeting and then have a meeting with somebody who's a mentor or a coach in the organization. So, you know, I'd say we do have to adjust a little bit, but also look for what are the opportunities that COVID-19 can bring us and the remote work that many of us are doing.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question in today's deck, but I do just want to super encourage anybody, if you do have a question that you'd like to pose to Diane, please feel free to come off mute and do that. Just do your best not to interrupt any other guests or our wonderful guest speaker. Meanwhile, you can totally interrupt me because I get paid to fill the silence, so please feel free. Stacy, I see you're off mute. Did you have a question you wanted to ask? No? Okay, we'll keep going, but please feel free to jump in if any of you have questions you'd like to pose to Diane. Okay, so this person had written in saying, personally, I always feel like I'm imposing on someone if I ask them for guidance or assistance. I know this is a me issue, but how have you been able to get past that mentality in the past? So do you experience this at all?
I did at one time, but you know, I've kind of gotten over it over the years. So again, people, this is something that in business, it's really common and well known. And you know, actually, if you're not asking for guidance and assistance, people could be judging you because you're not. Hey, listen, that person stays to themselves. They don't ever, you know, ask for opinions or advice. They're not ambitious because they're not out looking for a mentor. So unfortunately, you know, again, it's the fine line, but you're really not imposing. And the other thing that I'd say too is, if it's someone who is more senior in the organization who tends to have a busy schedule, most of them, there's an expectation that they will be mentoring and sponsoring people. And in fact, frankly, they can get some credit for it. But just because they're busy and maybe have to cancel a meeting at the last minute, I do suggest people continue to follow up and say, hey, sorry, we couldn't get together. I'm gonna, you know, let's reach out and reschedule and find some more time on the calendar. But again, you know, I think it's that self-talk. Hey, listen, this is something that is done, that is expected, and I'm just going to do it. And frankly, it just gets easier with time and practice after you do it a few times. And if you want, start with someone who's a friendly, right? So I'm pretty well known in my organization for being an advocate for women and you know, diverse populations. So I'm an easy target. If someone reaches out to me, I'm going to find time to you know, to meet with them. So, you know, maybe that's how someone starts and gets used to it.
Yeah, I fully agree. It's definitely something that gets easier with practice. One of the ways that I got past it early on was trying to think to myself, like, if I knew how to do this, would I have a problem sharing this with somebody else? Or if this is a question being posed to me or an ask being posed to me, would I have a problem with it? And if so, why? Is it, going to be a lot more time consuming, that kind of thing? Because that can maybe help you prepare for maybe what their answer would be in case it's not an enthusiastic yes. The other thing that helped me was being prepared with like an offer. So, hey, could you show me how to do such and such? It'll help me get this job done a lot more quickly. And then if you have anything, I'd love to help you with, or, something like that. Helped, and even if I wasn't taken up on the offer bit, it still helped me feel a little less like I was just all take and no give. So, yeah.
The other thing too is not to let, like, if it doesn't work out with one person, just dust yourself off and, try with somebody else.
Oh yeah. I mean, you can even ask them, like, if they say no, be like, oh, okay, I understand. Is there anybody else that, might have time or could show me how to do this or could help me with X project or whatever? Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Okay. So this, it kind of circles back to what we were talking about earlier. This person wanted to know about establishing advocates as they transition to a new industry. So this can be hard, even if you're just moving between departments. But when you're not only moving between companies, you're moving to a whole new field. Are there any, kind of ways that you can, tips and tricks for like, things you can look out for on somebody that might be an advocate or might be an ally?
So this is where I do suggest you look kind of outside the organization. So if you look to an industry association, so I work in the defense industry, there's NDIA, right? There's INSA, there's organizations that are related to the industry. And you might even find people in your own company who are members locally of that organization. Professional societies is another way. So, if you're a member, so I mentioned before, I'm a member of the Society of Women Engineers, there's women from all industries there. So I kind of have a ready-made set of, hey, I've been doing this, but I'm really interested in getting into energy field, right? I can find somebody who's in the energy field. So that's one of the ways you can. Another way is through an alumni association. If you have an alumni association at your school, any way you can work to build your network and, outside. And then another way is kind of, and I'm sure people here have social media stalked, right? So LinkedIn stalk, right? Look through your friends, if find companies in your industry and look in your friends list to see if any of them actually work there or have worked there, or, that's another way to use the connections you have to find folks. And then, again, it's up to, making an introduction. Hey, I'm friends with so-and-so, or I went to such and such school, or, whatever. And I noticed you're in this industry. I was wondering if you have a few minutes, 30 minutes to chat.
Yeah, like, hey, I'm also a transplant in this city. Even if you don't have anything specifically really in common with this other person, you can, kind of move to the broad strokes. Like anything to get that common ground is going to help it's going to help you feel a little bit more comfortable, but it's also going to help that other person connect to you.
Mm-hmm.
So that actually leads nicely into this next question, because this person had wanted to know about advocating for yourself within your current organization. They had specifically said, I have people I currently work with that I want to approach about creating a job for me on their team, but I don't really know how to approach them about this. And I thought this was worded interestingly, because I feel like in a certain aspect, yeah, it's advocating for yourself, but it's also, like you said, kind of that networking and how to not only advocate for yourself, but advance or, kind of grow in your career. So what advice would you have for this person?
I'd start with whoever is the leader or whoever would create the job, schedule time and say, hey, listen, I look at your team and how it's working, and it's something that's really of interest to me. These are the things, share what it is that's exciting to you about the work that they do. And then if you know enough, maybe even suggest, hey, I've noticed this is kind of a gap in your team, or you don't have someone who does this. And, I'd love to become part of the team, if you have a spot. And again, it's about, I know there are some people who the direct approach is uncomfortable for, but I promise you it gets easier over time. And if you want, you can practice. So find a peer, a sister, husband, dog, and just, sit and say, actually say the words out loud, practice. Many of us have Zoom accounts now. You can even do it on screen and either record yourself or see how it works, right? So, if you're uncomfortable about being direct, by all means, practice what it is you're going to say and kind of how you're going to get in there. But, you don't, to me, you need to, I've learned over time, you need to ask for what you want. You can't assume that people will know and understand. And in fact, people are making assumptions about you. So you might as well speak up for yourself. There was a woman who was a candidate for a job, but the person who was the hiring supervisor said, "Oh, she can't take that job. It requires a ton of travel, and she has 3 kids and she's a single mom." Yeah, but she's a single mom who lives next to her mom, who's a built-in support structure. Her kids aren't really, really young, and her ex-husband's in the same town and can take the kids. So without even asking, he's making an assumption that she can't take a job that requires a lot of travel, when that wasn't in fact the case. So being direct and sharing with people, hey, listen, I would be really interested in international assignment, or travel isn't a problem for me, that then you're not leaving it to their imagination about what assumptions, they're making about you.
Yeah, I've heard this on a lot of different chats, especially one we had that was about, advancing your career and like how to make it known. And one of the things that people usually talk about, not only is like about this, like letting people know what your objectives are or what you want, because nobody can help you get where you're going if they have no idea where you want to go besides where you are right now. And like you said, like it's not good to assume that somebody can't do something because, of whatever other, it doesn't even have to be personal. It could be like, well, they already have a lot on their plate, so of course they don't want to be added to this other team. Like it also works the other way, right? Like you don't want somebody to assume like, well, of course they'll take on that task because, they're the best person for that job. It's better to ask like, hey, is this something you'd be interested in? Or we'd like you to take this on. How does it work with your current workload? And it gives both parties kind of the room and the respect to be like, oh yeah, that's not a problem. I can absolutely do that. Or like, yeah, it's kind of an issue. If we could make these changes, then I could swing it, or, whatever. But you don't get anywhere by not telling people you want to go somewhere. Yeah.
And for those of you who are leaders who have people work for you, don't assume for your team either. Ask. And then that actually is, modeling good behavior, right? So there's sometimes I'll ask someone a question and they're like, really, Diane? Like, that. And I said, listen, things change, times change, situations change. I'm not going to assume, I'm going to ask.
Yeah, it never hurts, especially when you're doing it, in an open and respectful manner, because you want to either, give this person more opportunities or, something like that. You can always, kind of fall back on that. Okay, so this actually leads in really nicely to this next question, because I feel like when we have a lot of these discussions about, telling people that you want to advance, or telling, talking with the people at your organization and networking, so, through that way, we sometimes get into these same situations where somebody feels like either their manager isn't supportive or their manager doesn't want them to move on. So how would you navigate that space of pursuing another opportunity within your same organization when you don't think that your existing manager will be supportive?
So that is a tough one. Most organizations, so for example, expectation in Raytheon is if you're going to apply for another job, you do let your supervisor know. But hopefully there's no leader who's going to hold anybody back or from another opportunity. So just have a frank conversation with your manager and say, listen, this is the situation. For example, I think that moving to this other department will really give me experiences I need to achieve my career goals. and to have that frank conversation. And, you know, if it really gets difficult or tough, particularly in corporations, you can, you know, reach out to HR and ask for some support there. But if you've, you know, if you've been having direct, frank conversations with your manager about what you want to do, where you want to go, the type of experiences you want to have, this probably wouldn't come as a surprise, right? So that's another reason to really, you know, whether your organization has performance reviews that kind of schedule time when you can formally have the conversation, or, you know, if you just decide to schedule periodic meetings with your leader to kind of check in on your career, you know, that would be helpful to set it up for this type of situation.
Yeah. Plus, like, we don't live in a world where people expect you're going to get one job and keep that same job for the next, you know, 30 years or even the next 10 years necessarily. So it shouldn't necessarily come as a shock to anybody that you do want to advance your career. You want to learn more, you want to grow, you want to, you know, keep moving forward. Is this, just asking out of curiosity, because I've never had to be in this situation personally, but is this a situation where you could maybe approach HR, especially if you feel like your manager is kind of actively blocking something like this, you know, to go and say, hey, you know, this is an alley that I'm looking to pursue, but I'm not really getting a ton of support? Or should you maybe reach out to the group that you're hoping to join?
Either one would work. I mean, HR is interested in helping people develop their careers. And you know, the leader in the organization you're willing to join, and particularly if they want you to be there, could be a real advocate in helping to pave the way. You know, either one of those would be helpful.
Now, would you say that the same advice applies if what you're going after is a promotion as opposed to, you know, moving elsewhere within the organization?
I think promotions tend to be easier because it becomes a lot harder to say, listen, you know, yeah, I know you want to do that, but we really need you here, right? So you're actively holding someone back in their career. So to me, promotions tend to be a lot easier. Lateral moves, it's a little bit trickier, but again, you know, having that rotational assignment, those different experiences are what really rounds out someone. And, you know, they learn more about the organization and they're going to be a better employee. And just because they leave doesn't mean they won't come back necessarily to the organization.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You know, when you're asking for things like this, you are doing so. It's not just for you, right? It's for the organization. Definitely stands to benefit if you are learning more and becoming, you know, more of a, you know, useful employee, or, you know, filling a hole or helping, you know, support some organization or some you know, team that needs it.
And I don't recommend trying to do it on the sly. Should be upfront about it. That's
agreed. Yeah, it's not something that you should have to hide. You know, it should be like, you know, especially when you're still staying within the own organization. You know, there's a lot of times you don't necessarily want your employer to know that you're job hunting, but, you know, I saw an article about it the other day. We're looking at, towards the end of the pandemic, they're forecasting that at least 1 in 4 people will be searching for a new job.
Yeah, in fact, we were just doing planning for hiring. So I happened to read an article in Fortune magazine that was just, those statistics are in there too. So a lot of turnover because people kind of hunkered down, right? And now there may be people just really looking for a change.
Well, I feel like not only did people really hunker down, but they also, this whole situation threw into really stark contrast in some places that maybe your needs aren't really being met by your organization, or maybe just your priorities and what you really want out of your job, out of your life, out of your, you know, your whole situation maybe has completely shifted. And so, you know, we have all these people in unprecedented numbers working remotely that never did before. And now you're kind of seeing either that the grass might be greener on the other side, or maybe, you know, something like a commute didn't really matter as much to you, but now it does. You know, that kind of stuff like can be really, you know, interesting to know.
Mm-hmm. there's a lot that we've learned about ourselves over this past year for sure.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so to go to our next question here, this person wrote in saying, I've been at my current job for almost 5 years and I've been responsible for the development and execution of major projects. Although I've received incremental pay increases, I've never been promoted or considered for a higher position. What's the best way to approach this without sounding like I'm either begging, like I'm begging to be promoted?
So, from my perspective, people tend, if you're looking for a promotion, rather than say, I want to be promoted, you really need to frame it in context of the scope of your job and increasing the scope of your job and your responsibilities. Just a promotion for promotion's sake typically doesn't, I mean, it can work some places, but it typically doesn't. So talk about, hey, since I came in this job, these are my initial responsibilities, and over time, these are the results that I've delivered. This is where I've added to the scope of my work. So I really think, that, there's an opportunity for promotion, and then say, so, what do you think? And get some feedback about where the person who's in the position to promote might maybe give you more responsibility, or share what their concerns are with your being promoted. It's interesting. A lot of folks will say, well, I've been at this job for 5 years, I should be promoted. But a lot of time leaders are looking for results and what have you contributed and brought to the job. So just showing up every day is not a reason to get promoted, right? It has to be, hey, these are the contributions, and they're real. And one of the issues with women, right, is that they're much more reluctant because we've been socialized to not be advocates for ourselves. But if we really sit down and write, these are the things that I've accomplished, right, and take that time to do that, when you put them all in one place, it can be really compelling, and it can even put the seed. So even if the first time I ever asked to be promoted, right? So I was a junior engineer, that's what they called them then, right? So I'm a junior engineer and I asked to be promoted. The answer was absolutely no, it's not going to happen, But it must have sunk in a little, because my boss went off, and about a month later, I was promoted along with the other people who were the same grade as me who didn't ask. Like, we all got promoted, but I think it kind of just put the seed in the mind, in my supervisor's mind at the time. So, again, it's something where you kind of start the conversation, have it, talk about what it would take. And sometimes that might be enough. And if it isn't, just kind of continue. And again, look for that additional responsibility and scope.
Yeah. I mean, I also, when I was reading this, it sounds like the person knows what their contribution to the company or to the team is, right? Which is half the battle. Because sometimes, like you said, it can be really hard to show what you've done or your achievements, because it sort of feels like tooting your own horn. And you're right, especially as women, we are not socialized to do that. So it sounds like they do have a really good argument here. I know that it's something that I heard on a recent chat that I wish I had known earlier, because I should have done this for myself, but I just didn't. I'd never seen it modeled, and I didn't have the vocabulary really to know how to phrase it. But especially if I'm reading correctly into this question, and the person has been maybe getting more and more responsibility given to them without a promotion or a pay increase that really reflects what you're doing more of. This woman had talked about how she had gotten this job, and within like a month or two of starting, she had a ton more responsibility put on her and more tasks and this kind of thing than what was, than what she signed up for. And that, especially when you're new, you want to be a team player, right? You don't want to be that person that's like, well, that's not in the job description, because that's not, it's not flattering for anyone. And so the way she approached it was by going to her supervisor and saying, hey, I started a couple weeks ago or a month ago or whatever. These are the tasks that have been added to my, to my workload in addition to everything that you told me I'd be responsible for when I was hired. Can we talk about, raising my salary or my compensation to reflect all this extra work that I'm doing? And if not, then can we talk about redistributing some of these tasks? Because if I'm worried that if we're not gonna talk about, increasing my pay, that I might not have a real clear idea of what you want me to be focusing on. Some of these might be tasks that I shouldn't have taken on or I shouldn't have been given. And I thought that was a really good way to talk about it, because it puts it in a respectful way where your worth and you are saying, if you want me to do all this extra stuff, this is what I think it's worth. But you're also not creating a hill that you should die on. You're saying, like, if that's not what you want to do, fine, but then we need to adjust what, some of these responsibilities are.
You remind me of a story that happened to me. It wasn't at Raytheon. I worked at a corporate office, and one of our corporate vice presidents left, and he had a set of responsibilities, and they said, listen, he left, can you take this on until we find someone to replace him? So I had my regular job and I started doing this other job as well. So for 6 months, a year, I'm doing both of these jobs. All of a sudden I hear that, hey, so-and-so is coming back from an overseas assignment. We want him to be in this job that you've been doing for the past year. And I was like, well, am I a candidate for I should be a candidate for the job. And he, I remember it was the CEO looking at me saying, like it hadn't even occurred to him that I might be interested in taking the job. And, at the time, we had just hired a woman who was our lead for diversity and inclusion. And I had become, she was a friend of mine, and I went in and she goes, yeah, of course he didn't consider it, because you did it just like a woman would. And I was so upset because she had no sympathy for me, right? She said, a man wouldn't have taken on the responsibility without asking, what's in it for me? Can I do it for 4 months and then revisit, et cetera? And since then, and it's been years, too many times women will take on the extra work and expect that the hard work and getting the job done is gonna, be noticed.
Yeah, you do it on good faith.
And
you do a really good faith thing of like, well, they'll notice. I'm sure they will.
I ended up leaving, and I was replaced by 2 people and three people. So 2 leaders and someone who worked for them that were even graded higher than I was. But, at that point I was like, what, this isn't for me. So I just need to, and I ended up actually with a better job. So it worked out for me.
That's wild. I mean, I've heard so many stories like that where it's like, well, they just passed you over, or they didn't, thank you so much for sharing that, because I feel like that really is something that a lot of our audience can probably relate to. All right, so we only have about 10 minutes left in today's session. It always goes way too quickly. So I'm going to try and touch on a couple more areas that y'all had asked questions about. But again, if you're here and you have a question you'd like to ask, throw it into the chat. You can also DM me, or you can come off mute to ask your question directly to Diane. Okay, so before we kind of wrap up today's session, I wanted to cover this topic here. This person had written in saying, what do you think are the most common organizational dynamics that impact women's advancement? And what can we do to prevent any of these, maybe negative impacts from happening?
So I think I kind of actually started with some of the organizational dynamics, right? I talked about bias, conscious and unconscious. I talked about kind of the double bind and imposter syndrome. And there's, I took a certificate course from Cornell University for executive women in leadership, and they talked about gender dynamics. And there were times I literally was taking the class and I was angry because it talked about all the ways that women had to, or recommended all the ways that women needed to flex into the corporate culture, going so far as to talk about nail length, clothes, type of haircut, et cetera, right? So I'm literally like really stewing at it. And you could argue that, well, that's not great advice because people should be able to come to work as their authentic self. But you know, everybody, we are where we are on the diversity journey. We're not nearly as far as I want to be. I would love to not have to talk about, you know, inclusion and those things because it's so far in the past, right? We're not talking about firsts, you know, the first woman who did this or the first African-American woman who did that, right? Like I wouldn't want it, you know, that's kind of my you know, the dream, right? But we are where we are. And, you know, particularly, you know, industry is different. So in male dominated industries or in companies that have kind of tend to have longer histories, the culture is pretty ingrained, including the biases that exist, right? So, you know, understanding what those are and then being able to address them. So one of the things, Meg, that you said before, you know, Adam Grant and Sheryl Sandberg did a series of op-eds for the New York Times, and one of them was called Speaking While Female, and it referred to the phenomena of, you know, a woman saying something in a meeting and it kind of being passed, you know, ignored, and then a man says it a few minutes later, right? And it's this brilliant idea.
That echo, right? You're looking, right. It's not even really, so most of the time, at least when I've experienced it, it's not even really a different way of saying your idea. Sometimes it's literally an echo of what you just said.
And, you know, it's being understanding and finding allies in those situations. So if you know, one of the things I've done is I see it now and I look out for it. So if I hear someone say it and someone else repeat it, I like call it out, right? And maybe not in an unprofessional way. But really, you know, again, you were talking about having the vocabulary, et cetera. So when you start to understand what gender dynamics can show up in the work situation, then, you know, you can see them and kind of deal with them as they come up. So, and unfortunately, there's really a lot of them.
Yeah, very true. Okay, so we only have, like I said, about 5 minutes left. I want to make sure we held time at the end here to talk a little bit more about how Raytheon and the fact that they're hiring and things like that. So why don't we do two things here? I want you to talk about what your favorite part is about working at Raytheon, and then I'd like to talk a little bit more about the positions you're looking for. And I know that we've also got Kaylee on the line as well to you know, kind of discuss more about maybe the application process, as well as, you know, plus the roles that you're hiring for as well, Diane.
So what I love about working at Raytheon is we are working on some of the most cutting edge technology that there is. It's just fascinating, exciting, pushing the bounds of what we can do. And, you know, I am an engineer. You know, even in my 8th grade yearbook, it said I was going to be an engineer. So it's something that I've been, you know, kind of thinking about and excites me, right? Technology really excites me. So I just love, you know, to be there at the forefront of, you know, of what we're doing. And, you know, my son is in the Army. So a lot of what we do really helps those who are forward deployed. So the mission's kind of important to me as well. So, but, you know, and I know we'll turn it over to Kaylee, but we are hiring like crazy. I have 50 open positions in my organization right now. And in the broader organization, you know, we have a goal to hire thousands of people into the organization. So in, you know, that's in, I work in digital technology and engineering and all of those fields. We have so many open positions. And again, great place to work, exciting work, really important mission.
Awesome, thank you. And Kaylee is putting in the chat, and I do want to highlight for her as well. You can check out the open roles for Raytheon on their website. You can also check them out on Power to Fly. So obviously we have a lot. We probably don't have every role, but definitely take a look at those. And you're welcome to apply through Power to Fly, or you can apply directly on Raytheon's page. Definitely make sure you tell them Power to Fly sent you. We don't get like a cut of your salary or anything like that. We just want to make sure that we're trying to find Raytheon some great great candidates, and we're advancing and opening up our own community to these roles and to these opportunities. So Kaylee, did you want to speak a little bit about some of the other roles that you're hiring for at Raytheon?
You're on mute.
Looks like we might have lost Kaylee.
It looks like she's on mute.
Oh, Kaylee, you're on mute right now. So if you can unmute, then you can talk with us.
That's the quote of 2020. You're on mute.
I know, right? I do it constantly. I'm on these things like 3 to 5 days a week. Sorry, Kaylee, go right ahead.
All right. So I got unmuted. So yeah, I was going to say we have thousands of roles. If you guys don't see the right role today, it could pop up tomorrow, might pop up Friday. Keep checking. Power to Fly has most of RIS. But we also have other divisions. So if you don't see something, go ahead and check it out. We're all about just increasing our female numbers across the board. So engineering, supply chain, finance, HR, ops, cyber and security, IT. Any roles we have open right now, and they do change regularly. So go to the Power to Fly website if you don't see it. I also put my email in there. You guys are also welcome to email me directly. I know Meg mentioned that you guys get one-on-one communication from Power to Fly, but you also get it from Raytheon. We partner together, Power to Fly and Raytheon. So we do our best to make sure that we connect with everyone. Let's see, I think there was a question, Meg. I don't know, Karina?
Yeah, I saw that Karina had a question, but I didn't see what her question was.
Want to come off mute?
Yeah, Karina, if you have a question and would like to come off mute, please feel free to. We have about 2 minutes left.
Well, my question
Karina?
was, hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Karina, I think you went back on mute. If you want to type it and type your question.
Sorry. Okay, so you guys, Raytheon in general, had like a one-on-one with HR a few years ago, and I was able to talk to somebody, and they said, you know what, you have the experience, but you don't have the degrees. So what's your, I guess my question is, how do you market yourself if you don't have the degree certifications, but do have the experience and the ambition to learn?
That's a good question, Karina. I'm glad you asked that. So, as a recruiter, I've always told people, especially females, even if you don't mark all the boxes, apply anyway, right? Raytheon being part of the Department of Defense, a little bit different. There's a lot of red tape. Just make sure that you're looking at the actual requirements. Not all of the positions are going to require a degree. Some of them will say in lieu of a degree, so many years of experience in a certain field. So you just have to pay really close attention to the actual requirements. Because again, the industry that we're in, we do have to hire someone that fits and checks every requirement, not the preferred box, but the actual requirement box. So again, just kind of pay close attention to that when you're doing your search. Also, security clearance usually becomes a question. So a lot of our roles will require security clearance, but there's 2 different ways it's worded. One will say upon day 1, which means you need active clearance to come in and get started. And the other way will say within the first year, which means we will help you and sponsor that, and you don't have to have it day 1. So again, it's just a matter of looking at the wording under the requirements. I hope that helps, Karina.
Yes,
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Kaylee. Okay, so we are at time, unfortunately, so I am going to have to say goodbye to everybody. But before we go, I just want to say a huge, huge thank you to Diane and Kaylee for joining us from Raytheon. It is always a pleasure to speak with you women, but I just want to highlight that, this isn't an easy thing to participate in. It doesn't just take, the hour that you see us here. There's always prep involved. So thank you both so much for coming, taking time out of your day and sharing with our community. It's been very nice. And then I also want to say a huge thank you to our wonderful community members. Y'all submitted some great questions ahead of today's event. They were very much appreciated. And the participation on today's session was great as well. So thank you so much for doing that. It always helps to make this feel more like an interactive experience. Thanks again. Hopefully I'll see many more of you on upcoming chats joining us. They're always free to attend. I also put in a couple links in the chat where you can check out our upcoming events, as well as sign up for our free diversity summit that's happening in April. That one is going to be focused on elevating Black women, but as always, it is about rebuilding the workforce in 2021 and making it the way it should have been, how we want to see our world advance. Kind of like, as Diane was saying, get to a point as quick as we can where, diversity is the norm and not something we have to actively, push ourselves and push everyone else to do. We want true representation and we want everyone to get the opportunities that they need. So thank you so much. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
Thanks, Meg.